Chapter 12. There wasn't much I could do for Luke once the dough lady sent me packing. I headed away from the home with no plan for what to do next. Something about this kid had me stuck in that no sheep town, always watching my back for Billy or the truck from the pound. The kid needed me. I guess that's what it was. He needed me like nobody else ever had. Sniffing my way down the street, I kept thinking about all those boys. I couldn't figure out what they were doing in that place. Had they all run away from home? Were they captured one at a time like stray dogs? Why didn't their moms and dads come and get them back? From my short time at the pound, I remembered the happy reunions between dogs and their owners. But some dogs got stuck there too long. There were terrible stories about what happened to you if you didn't get a home. Stories that made my fur stand on end. They wouldn't do that to boys, though, would they? By instinct, I had been moving toward the darker end of town, onto streets with broken streetlights and boarded up houses. People in the darker places were easier on dogs. As a rule, they didn't get all worked up over a tipped trash can. You got your higher quality garbage in the better neighborhoods, but you could end up paying for it with your freedom. I turned into the yard of a house with a wide, sagging porch and nice thick bushes to hide in. To look at the place, you'd have thought nobody had ever lived there, but the porch underneath was a regular rat hotel. I stuck my nose in, and the tenants ran in all directions, which was fine with me. Sleeping with rats isn't my idea of a good night's rest. They never settle down, always scratching or sniffing. I don't know how they get any sleep at all. But I wasn't sleeping so well myself. Too much on my mind. Billy, Tiffany, you, and you two. Had it been right for me to run? Shouldn't I have stayed, stuck it out with my friends, tried harder to talk them into leaving? What did my life amount to anyway? Was it even worth saving? The truth, it seemed to me then, was that I wasn't getting anywhere. I'd come no closer to where I belonged. In all my time on the road, I'd seen exactly 2 sheep. 2, and they were stuck in a truck. All I got there was a snootful of memory. Where was my life going now that I was free again? Without honest work, what good was I? I was a beggar and a thief, nothing more. I knew the goat man wouldn't be proud of me, and I didn't even want to think about Dad. A smarter dog would have found the sheep by now. It was another fitful night, just me and my thoughts and those rats. Morning came at last. Light seeped in under the porch. My hiding place was dismal in the morning light. Broken bottles, cigarette butts, a bicycle wheel threaded with spider webs. I crawled out, did a couple of rolls in the dust to get the kinks out. I wasn't in a very good mood, and my empty stomach ached. I started back toward the home, giving my ugliest sheep eye to every cat that crossed my path. Scared the heck out of a lady's chihuahua, too, but then everything scares those skinny little things. Something new. A long white banner was stretched across the chain-link fence at the Good Shepherd Home for Boys. There were words on it and stick figure drawings of people walking into the home and coming out with boys. So that was it. The Good Shepherd Home was a pound for boys. They lived there until their parents came back or somebody else adopted them. Adoption was all the dogs ever talked about at the pound. Man, did they ever carry on when the people came. All but me and the sheepdog. We learned to let our best selves shine. Then Billy came and, well, you know the rest. Luke was waiting at the end of the fence. As soon as he saw me, a big grin broke out on his face, and he came running, waving something in the air. "Hey, Jack, guess what I got for you? A bone!" Well, it was a bone, all right. Not a shred of meat on the thing, but I gnawed on it some to make the kid happy. I could only guess what he'd gone through to find me the very thing he thought a dog would love. Somebody had cleaned Luke up. He was wearing his Sunday go-to-meeting clothes. That's what the goat man called them. And his haystack hair was slicked down with something sweet-smelling and sticky. "Come on," he said. "There's a place where you can hang out and wait for me. It's adoption week. I got to do this dumb lineup thing again." He waved for me to follow. "Hey, don't forget your bone." I followed him around the side of the building. When we got to the narrow doorway, he stopped and looked around to see if anybody was watching. "There's just tools and stuff in here. I found a rug for you to sleep in." He opened the door to a small room, dark and musty, smelling of gasoline. It was jammed with tools like the kids said, and the usual cobwebs. Never stopped spinning, those spiders. On the floor was a nice little striped rug. But I couldn't go inside, not even for Luke. "Come on, boy," he said, stepping in. "It's all right." But it wasn't. "What's the matter, Jack?" He knelt down and began to pet me. I could tell that he was trying real hard to understand. But even with people language, how could I have explained what it's like to be locked up? Even the home didn't lock the boys inside. I knew Luke wouldn't do that to me, but somebody else might. I couldn't take the chance. Luke unbuckled my harness and gave me a rub down. "Luke! Lucas!" Luke jumped up. "Criminy! That's Mrs. Pinch. I gotta go." He bolted out of the tool room, dragging my harness behind him. "Wait for me, Jack," I heard him call. "I won't be long. Nobody ever picks me." That stopped me in my tracks. What did he mean nobody ever picked him? What kind of people wouldn't pick Luke? I had to see the people who came to the adoption week. If they didn't like Luke, they couldn't be very smart. I hung around until several cars and one old pickup truck pulled into the parking lot. As the people got out, I looked them over. They seemed okay to me. For people, I mean, a little serious, but that was to be expected. You didn't want to adopt a dog or a kid if you hadn't thought a whole lot about it. I mean, it isn't like getting a fish or a rabbit. Then I saw the perfect folks for Luke. They got out of the pickup and crossed the parking lot, hand in hand. The lady had a round pink face, a happy kind of face, and the man made me think of Bob. He was shorter and younger than Bob, but he walked with that same sure stride. And his hair? It was like Luke's without the sticky stuff, a real haystack. My stomach was growling something fierce, but I had to see what would happen. I had to see the look on Luke's face when his new folks picked him. The windows on the side of the building were long and low to the ground. That made it easy for me to look in. Most of the rooms were empty. Well, empty of people. There was furniture and stuff. Then I found the room with the kids. I crouched low so that I couldn't be seen, stuck my nose on the ledge, and watched. The boys were all dressed like Luke with dark pants and clean white shirts. They stood in a single line, their hands on their sides. They weren't like the dogs at the pound. You could see they were trying very hard to behave. The tall ones stood with their shoulders back, like soldiers. The smallest ones looked like a little frightened. I didn't see Luke at first, and then I did. He was at the very end of the line, scowling down at his shined up shoes. His fists were stuffed in his pockets. On the other side of the room stood the parents. I mean, the people who wanted to be parents. They looked a little frightened, too. The dough lady Luke called Mrs. Pinch was there, and so was a tall man with gray patches of hair on his head and a very long nose. I couldn't hear what the man was saying, but his mouth kept moving for a very long time. I saw the boys laughing at something he said. All the boys but Luke. Luke never looked up, not once, and he didn't laugh at all. Then there was all the shaking of hands. Strangest thing. In their long line, the boys walked up, did this little bow, and shook each person's hand. The parent people smiled and looked the boys over as they passed like sheep. Luke was the last in line. He slumped along with hunched shoulders, dragging his feet. He shook his hands without looking up once, not even when he got to the perfect folks. It was downright discouraging. What was the matter with the kid? Did he like living with the dough lady? Didn't he want a real home? I watched until several of the boys had been picked and left holding the hand of their proud new parents. The folks with the pickup left without anybody. When Luke came out, I couldn't even look at him. Come on, he said, as if he were mad at me, but I knew he wasn't. Let's get out of here. I don't care about any of that stuff, he said, kicking a stone halfway across the parking lot. Bunch of dumb people. I wish old Pinch and them would make us do that. They just want to get rid of us is all, especially us big kids. Nobody ever picks us no matter what we do. But you didn't even try, I wanted to say. Even the boy who'd pushed Luke around had been trying his best to get some parents. He stood straight and tall like he was proud of himself. He shook hands like he really meant it. Not Luke. Well, that boy didn't get chosen either, but he tried. You had to respect that. We left the home behind, Luke scuffing his feet as if they were too heavy to pick up. He was wearing his old clothes again and his torn tennis shoes. There's probably something the matter with me, he muttered. I mean, besides the reading. Things get mixed up in my head sometimes. It's probably in the records. Probably says I'm crazy or something. We crossed several streets. Luke kept wiping his runny nose on his sleeve. At least I got the quarter. We all get one for being good. Hey, I know. Let's get an ice cream. You never know how ice cream can cheer a soul up, but I'd never tasted any till that day. Luke bought us a vanilla ice cream cone and we shared it sitting on the sidewalk. People kept stopping and smiling at us as if we were putting on a show. If Billy had been there, he'd have charged admission. But I didn't want to think about Billy, not ever again. My dad bought me an ice cream cone once, Luke said, taking a big swipe with his tongue. That's why I always get vanilla, because it's what he bought me. We were making a real mess of that ice cream, but it was real good. Not as good as goat's milk, but close. Luke frowned. My dad wasn't a famous runner, Jack. I just said that because that's what I tell everybody. The only time I ever saw my dad run was when the cops were chasing him. That was the last time I saw him, too. He gave me the tip end of the cone. Then he wiped his mouth on his sleeve. I never did have a mama, is the thing. Well, I guess I did when I was born, but I don't know what happened to her. Luke turned out to be a real talker. Moms passed us pushing baby carriages. A little boy floated a balloon from his perch on his dad's shoulders, and Luke kept right on talking. I think he'd been waiting a long time to stick all his words together. Now that he had somebody to listen, he wasn't about to quit. When my aunt called the home, I looked around for something of my dad's to keep, something to take with me. That's when I found the stopwatch. He reached into his pocket and took out the pieces he'd picked up from the tracks. He rubbed his thumb back and forth across the big piece. I laid my head on Luke's lap, wagged my tail to let him know I understood. He smiled then. It was like the sunrise, that smile. Like the sun forgetting the night it had left behind. There was still a lot of hope left in this kid. He had to have some folks, that's all. He had to. I'd done my share of looking, and I knew.